more than some of us, if not maybe most of us, like to enjoy ourselves a nice cold beer, especially during finals week. I'm sure not the only one counting down the days or the hours for finals to be over with, to go out and celebrate the end of another semester. But how many of us are actually responsible enough to not drink and drive? Today, I'm going to be going over the dangers of drinking and driving, and also the awareness of some simple choices we can make to avoid these kinds of problems. There are 3 ways that I highly believe we can avoid several of us to overcome this drinking and driving problem. One way I believe is by alternating the designated driver throughout your friends. Another way I also think we can avoid this is by calling a taxi. And finally, I also think inserting a breathalyzer is probably the safest way for us to avoid this drinking and driving. So to begin with my first main topic, according to a journal article I read up, it states that by encouraging drivers to remain alcohol-free, the designated driver concept both promotes a social norm of not mixing alcohol with driving, and it also fosters the legitimacy of non-drinking role. The use of a designated driver by the public and designated driver programs by servers of alcoholic beverages is encouraged for those over the age of 21. Now, I know from experience, once we're out partying or clubbing or at a bar, we tend to forget about the drive home after, and one too many drinks may slip by. That is why I believe it is a great way for you and your friends to choose a designated driver for a week, the next week switch it off, or even maybe the next day. Keep rotating it throughout maybe 4 or 5 of your friends. It can be very beneficial for all of you. You guys can all enjoy a night out and be very responsible. You just really have to trust your group of friends and trust that they're not going to even have one drink, because that can really cut you up. Moving on to my next point, I know several of us may not be used to this, and we may think it's not an ordinary thing to do here in Los Angeles, but calling for a taxi is actually one of the smartest things you can do. In an article I read up on EBSCOhost, it states that a survey data suggests that as many as 40% of American adolescents have driven after drinking, and that about 62% have driven with an intoxicated driver. You guys are probably wondering, taxi driver? Who does that? It's too expensive. Nobody does it. Well, calling for a cab can actually save you a lot of money, considering if you're going to risk your chances and drive after having a couple Bud Lights, Coronas, Dos Equis, some shots, or whatever it is that you may drink. God forbid you get in an accident, or if a cop pulls you over, you get a DUI. According to California Department of Alcohol and Drugs program, a DUI can cost you up to $6,600, with possible jail and even community service time. Not to mention you may have to go to, sessions, the AA meetings, and it can take up to 6 months, a year. After calculating the expenses, I am sure you would rather pay for a taxi driver than pay for a DUI. Not only that, think about it, you can be in danger of killing yourselves, others, or even the people in the car, even a sober person that's driving. Why would you want to put yourself in that position in the first place? And for my final point, I'm going to discuss what a breathalyzer does and how it can save you money and save several lives. According to a newspaper article, the author states, anyone convicted of impaired driving can't start his or her vehicle again if they have alcohol on their breath. The province will require even first-time offenders to have an ignition interlock device installed in their vehicle before they drive again. The device is purposely made to distinguish if the driver has been drinking prior to getting into the car. The vehicle will not start unless they pass a breathalyzer. I don't think we should wait for us to get a DUI to install a breathalyzer. I think people know if they do drink and drive and they can't find a way to go around drinking and driving, they should install a breathalyzer. I have a few friends whose parents have put breathalyzer in their car, actually a lot of them. Believe me, it's the smartest thing their parents have done for them. And trust me, it's worth it. It can save you. I know although the device is a little pricey, just about any person can buy it. With installation and monitoring, it may cost you over $1,000, but if you think you should have the device in order for you to stop drinking and driving, I highly suggest investing in one. It still is a whole lot cheaper than a DUI. And in conclusion, I hope you guys take with you some of the options or different routes you guys can take over passing the drinking and driving. Remember alternating the designated driver, calling for a taxi, or even inserting a breathalyzer. You can save many lives and also save some money. Don't risk your life nor others' lives. Save yourself from the debt. I'm not standing here telling you guys not to drink. I'm just telling you guys not to mix drinking and driving.
All right, Star.
I liked how your thesis statement was very clear, and your claim as well. You had a lot of interesting facts. I like the part where you said the difference between taking a cab and paying for a DUI, because I have been a victim of that. It's not fun, especially going to those AA classes and all that fun stuff. It's not cool at all. But I would suggest you flip your hair a lot. I think that might be a nervousness or something or other. I actually liked the whole thing. It was kind of short. Could have been a little bit longer, and you could have had a little bit more research on certain things. But overall, I liked it. I enjoyed it.
All right, the visualization at the beginning, I think, is pretty good. I'm not exactly sure that this is a controversial subject. The problem, of course, is that most people don't think that they are drunk enough to not drive. It's not that anybody thinks drunk driving is cool or it's reasonable. It's that they're just too stupid when they are intoxicated to recognize those kinds of things. And so the idea of addressing that as an issue, I think, it's an important one. And I think you go at it in a pretty reasonable way, trying to encourage people to consider alternatives that would make their lives simpler. They're pretty straightforward. Designated driver thing, of course, that assumes that your drinking is done in a group context with a set of people, or somebody, for instance, at a party who's going to be responsible for making sure everybody gets home okay. I think that that's okay to do, and you might want to build this up a little bit by showing some examples of it being successful, people talking about it as a success. Somebody who made a difference and feels good about having done those kinds of things, so that we'd be a little bit more encouraged to do that. But the idea, I don't think there's a lot of controversy on that particular idea. Now, the taxi thing, it was kind of strange to me, because the material that you really cite on the taxi issue here doesn't have anything to do with using a taxi. It has to do with what the consequences are of getting a DUI, which would apply to any of the points that you've got here. The only place that it's a little bit relevant is in the cost comparison thing, where you are in essence saying, well, people think about that and they think about it being an expense, and you're now trying to diminish the expense. You might want to point out how easy it is to get a cab, how that's one of the functions. By the way, you could also talk about free cab services that are available for people, especially from bars or on holidays, for instance, where people do engage in that sort of thing. I think you're missing an opportunity here to really develop that point and sell it a little bit more. I'm kind of interested in the breathalyzer thing when you say that people who don't even have a problem, they haven't had a conviction, are using these sorts of things. You said you've got friends whose parents put them on their cars and that it was a smart move on their parents' part. Apparently, their parents know their kids are drunks. You know, I'm sorry, I got to find a better way of saying it, but easily intoxicated alcoholics, whatever it happens to be, they recognize that that's a problem. Well, tell us a story. I mean, you don't have to use real names, but you could if you wanted to. But you say that you know that this has happened. How did the parents know to do this kind of thing? What kind of experience did they have? Has it worked? Has it been successful? Has this person, for instance, refrained from using their own car? They refrained from driving, or, for example, they've got out of the party, they used the breathalyzer, and they couldn't get their car started. You know, that sort of thing. And since we're talking about breathalyzers, and since the source of the problem at the beginning is that people don't always recognize this, why do we have to wait until you get in the car and have the car not start? Is there a way, can you get a breathalyzer that you can use, for instance, when you're leaving the party or when you're at the party and you breathe into it and you say, you know what, I think maybe I've had my limit. I better stop and now and give myself an hour before I leave because I know that I'm at the limit. Just a thought, just an idea here, that's something else that goes with that particular point. Delivery issues, I think it was kind of strange to me because you go to the script frequently when you're not citing material. It just looks like you are going to it as a crutch instead of talking to us. You know what the material is. It seems like it's pretty easily organized. And like I said, you're not really reading statistics or facts or quotes. You don't have any quotes in the speech. You have a couple of statistics, a couple of pieces of factual data. So I was wondering why you kept going to the notes so frequently, and it wasn't really clear to me. I think that's just a crutch thing, and you got to get past that. All right.